All right, looks like we are live. Welcome to Standing for Truth. I am your host and moderator, Donnie Bedinsky, for tonight's epic debate between Dr. Kent Hovind and Mark Reed. Tonight we are debating evolution. Is there reasonable evidence for evolution? And I do want to thank the debaters, Mark and Kent, for giving us their time for this important debate. And before we get into the debate itself, as I typically like to do, let's kind of get to know the debaters for tonight a bit, break the ice. And why don't we start with Mark? Mark, thank you so much for being here. You've been here several times, so I don't think you're any stranger to this platform, but how you been? A little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I've been great. Thank you, Donnie. I'm a computer sort of involved in IT, probably network engineering. It's called sort of communication side of things. I'm a student in that. I've worked in various fields of communication through the years, and I do enjoy debating. So, and Donnie's generous enough to give me a platform here, which is fantastic. So thank you so much for having me on, Donnie. Thank you to my interlocutor, Kent Hovind, for showing up and debating this amazing topic. And looking forward for the debate. Looking forward to having a really good dialogue about evolution.
Me as well, Mark, and I appreciate that introduction to the audience. I do have Kent and Mark. I have the relevant links in the description box. For you, Mark, I just have links to previous debates that you've done. And you've actually done a debate with Kent in the past on Noah's Ark and Noah's Flood. Tonight's evolution. So this is...
Well, it was specifically the Ark. So I've never done a flood debate, as in sort of geological or anything like that, but that was specifically on the Ark itself.
On the Ark.
Yes.
And that one was a ton of fun, which guarantees this one to be a ton of fun as well. So, Mark, thank you so much for the opening.
No guarantees. No guarantees. I'll do my best.
I'm guaranteeing it. No, I'm just kidding. Kent, we're going to hand it over to you then. Introduction, how you been, a little bit about yourself, a little bit about Dal.
All right. Well, thank you. My name is Kent Hovind. I've been a Baptist preacher 48 years. I started Dinosaur Adventureland in 1989. And we have 140 acres here in Lenox, Alabama. Visitors come from all over the world to see the place. It's all free. We have a science center with all kinds of cool activities on science and the Bible. We believe the Bible is true from cover to cover. The earth is about 6,000 years old. Dinosaurs lived with man all through history. They called them other names like dragons. There's no such thing as a geologic column. There's no such thing as a fossil record. No such thing. There's fossils, but it's not a record. So we defend the Bible from being true. We think the evolution theory being taught in our schools is the dumbest and most dangerous religion in the history of the planet. And that's where we stand, okay?
All right, Ken, thank you so much for the introduction. Thanks to the both of you. So for the audience sake, format for tonight is going to be mostly informal. We're going to have up to 10 to 12 minute opening statements. Mark's going to kick us off there. Then we'll give Kent, 10 to 12 minutes. And then we're just going to get into a free-flowing discussion. So whatever topics or points are brought up in the openings, those are going to be the points that we make sure to focus on for the discussion. And we'll do our best to make this comprehensive in terms of evolution. Is there reasonable evidence for evolution? And I should mention, we are going to have, as always, an audience Q&A. So please, everybody in the chat, just make sure you're tagging me at Standing for Truth, and then that way I won't miss your question. So, okay, Mark, we're going to hand it over to you whenever you are ready for your opening statement.
Thank you, and I'll just share my screen here. I do apologize. Just one second. I probably should have got this set up. Fantastic. So just tell me when you're seeing that and everything's good there, Donnie.
Mark, it looks good. It's up on screen. Looks great.
Okay, so this is sort of my presentation on biological evolution. Now, you might sort of say evolution, there's other types and things like that. Well, in common parlance, when we talk about evolution, we're talking about biological evolution. And this is sort of understood by most people, but I think there might be some confusion on this. So what's biological evolution? It's simply the change in heritable characteristics or the change in allele frequency over time. Now, there is no micro and macro evolution, doesn't exist, isn't a thing. All micro and macro refers to is time scale. It's exactly the same process. The mechanisms that are used can be things like artificial selection, which is people breeding traits into animals, these heritable characteristics, or it can be natural selection, which is generally what's found out in the wild. Now, I was asked for my strongest evidence. So the strongest evidence for evolution is genetic evidence. It is without question the strongest evidence we can come up with to date. Now, keep in mind, this doesn't sit by itself in an island. This matches up with all the other evidence out there, from fossil records to embryology to every single sort of field that says evolution is true. It matches up with, and those sort of lines of evidence are what give us a very, very confident justification for evolution. Now, the first off is genetic similarity. We are 95 to 98 similar, depending on the genetic code. So this is humans and your closest relatives, the chimpanzees. Now, the thing is that, like you're closer to your sister or your brother, as you get further away, like you'll be less genetically similar to your cousin, say, than your sister or brother, and then less genetically similar to the next distance relatives, just say your second nephew on your mother's side or something like that. That's exactly the same thing we see in animals. As we get further away from humans under the evolutionary model, the less genetically similar we are to them. And don't forget, we had the evolutionary model before we had genetics to confirm it. In fact, the creator of evolution, famous Darwin, he didn't even know about genetics. So that's just backing up what we've already found. Now, I've just included a couple of papers here, just pointing out that they're, almost identical, depending on how you evaluate it. 99 to 95% similarity. And I've just included those to show that there is a great similarity between them. This isn't a coincidence. And the way that animals are similar, that we found after we found genetics, shows that the model is true. And those were testable predictions. We predicted that they would be genetically similar. And just to have a look at the human and chimpanzee chromosomes. Now, what I'd like to draw your attention to, and I'll just grab my marker, is this section here, number 2. That's 2A and 2B on chimpanzees, while it's 2 on human. And that brings me into my next point, the chromosome 2 fusion. So chimps have 24 chimps have 24 pairs, humans have 23 pairs. How do we know that it fused? This slide is 4 of the chromosomes for human, chimpanzee, gorilla, and orangutan. Now, look at number 2, where we have the exact chromosome where it's fused together. And pay attention to how similar it is. The banding on it are exactly similar, just as if this section got fused to that section. All very similar. Now, here's the structure of the chromosome 2 in particular. Now, what we have on this chromosome is at the ends, we have telomeres, which basically signal the end point of this chromosome, and on the bottom as well. And this section here is called a centromere. Now, it has a number of functions. It joins up to another chromosome to make a chromatid during the replication process. But basically, with all chromosomes, you'll find telomeres on the outside and centromeres on the inside. And we have that with the chimpanzee. You have telomeres there and there, there and there, while you have centromeres on the inside. So it follows that if there was a fusion, we should see telomeres in the center where they shouldn't be, and we should also have another centromere where it should not be. And that's exactly what we found. That's exactly what the scientists found. They found that the chromosome 2 has telomeres in the center, and a second remnant, sort of a fragments of a second centromere down here, number 2. So it's got one centromere and it's got fragments of a second. So does that mean that, chimpanzees birthed humans? No, absolutely not. What it means is that a more primitive ancestor millions of years ago had two chromosome 2, or 2A and 2B, like chimpanzees, but while chimpanzees kept the two, the humans ones fused together. And just to note, things don't jump sideways on the tree of life. So this is a part of the tree of life that we call, or the phylogenetic tree. Things don't jump from branch to branch. That does not happen. So if you're saying, hey, did a human get birthed by a chimpanzee? No, never. Things don't jump sideways on those branches. It only keeps going. So we're not saying that any modern animal gave birth to another modern animal. What we're saying is that they had an ancestor, a common ancestor that gave birth to both. Now, this happened millions of years ago. So if there was another divergence, it would take millions of years. Now, the second point of, or really the third, apart from genetic similarity and the fusion, is endogenous retroviruses. And, you may have seen that on the channel before. They basically work on, and this is sort of a diagram of how they work. They're an RNA entering the cell and using an enzyme called reverse transcriptase to cut into, it uses integrase to cut into, and then the reverse transcriptase sort of copies them into the DNA of its host. The host then transfers it to DNA and replicates it, which allows it to spread. So it's then uses transcriptase to then produce more of itself and spread and spread and spread. Now, the structure is always the same for endogenous retroviruses. You have the long terminal repeats are always the boundary of the viral element, with the GAG, POL, and ENV sections of the virus. Now, the way that it works is that these retroviruses, they're in every single cell of your body. So every single cell is replicated with the coding for the viruses already there. The only way this can happen is because of the enormous number of insertion points or places they can enter the cell. And I'll just they can enter they can enter here. Oops, sorry. They can enter kind of here or here or here or here, but there's 10 million places they can enter and attach them, insert themselves into the DNA. Because that's the case, the only way that that particular virus could insert itself to be duplicated all the way through the body in exactly the same place is if it is done in the germline. Now, the germline is just a fancy way of saying the egg or the sperm. It has to have inserted itself in there. And then it becomes fixed in a population. So it gets, and the reason why there is it's in the woman is because the sperm or the egg gets into, it obviously is developed in the woman. It gives birth to somebody with that ERV coding, and then it gets fixed in the population. And there can be a number of reasons that happens that I'm happy to go into. So how do we know they're fossil viruses? So it's the LTR, or the long terminal repeats, that allow us to know that it is a viral element. So basically, if the viral element is in every single person, then we know that that insertion happened to a common ancestor of all the things with that viral element in it. Because don't forget, it can be 1 in 10 million places. So in order for two people for you to say that it happened separately, you would have to say that that 1 in 10 million happened for exactly the same virus for both of them. And there's a problem there. That is highly unlikely odds. So sort of why do we know that and sort of the testable prediction is if they're really endogenized retroviruses, they should have marks that the integrase has made this cut. Now that prediction appears to be true every single time we examine these viral elements. They do have the duplication of the long terminal repeat in the DNA code. So what does that mean for evolutionary theory? So there's 10 million possible insertion points. In order to integrate the same DNA, the same virus, so it has to have inserted in a chimpanzee. If we share the same DNA for these viruses, they must have been the same virus, not a different virus, the same virus must have inserted at the same point in both chimpanzees and humans. So let's look at it as in it was two events that happened separately. One, well, if the chances of it happening are 10 million to 1, and we share 205 instances of this, you have a better chance of picking out a specified grain of sand on the beach. Way better chance. The likelihood of that happening is so ridiculous that you could pick out grains forever and it wouldn't happen. The alternative is that an ancestor millions of years ago, I'm not talking recently as in, their father, no, millions and millions of years ago, they had a germline was infected, that was fixed in the population. Both the primitive primate, or even earlier, it could have been from a basic simple eukaryotic cell, evolved in two different directions, and that in turn still had that viral element fixed in both us and chimpanzees. And that is the way more likely scenario. The interesting thing is that when you go through the phylogenetic tree, or the tree of life that scientists have put together, the further away that something is related to us, the less viral elements they have like this. And the further something diverged from our particular branch of the tree of life, the less viral elements they have in common with us. Now, evolution also... Sorry?
You've got about a minute, Mark.
Oh, thank you. I'm just going to quickly go through this. This is not an atheist sort of model or something trying to... A lot of Christians accept this and they still have faith. They still have, faith in a God. It doesn't... What I wanted to point out is evolution does not discredit a God. It doesn't disprove a God. It doesn't make it not exist. And I just want to point out Francis Collins, who is the head of it. I really respect his work. I don't agree with his religious beliefs, but he's welcome to them. The evidence supporting the idea that all living things are descended from a common ancestor is truly overwhelming. I would not necessarily wish that to be so as a Bible-believing Christian, but it is so. It does not serve faith well to try and deny that. And that's basically a very, very devout man who accepts what he sees in front of him. And I just want to sort of say to the Christians who don't believe evolution that your faith is great, but when it's getting in the way of the truth and scientific truth, maybe have a real think about it and a think about what's valuable to you. Whether that be the truth or whether it be your personal beliefs. And I'd like to thank you as well for your time.
Okay, thank you. Let me stop the timer there, Mark. I'll get the slides off the screen. Okay, that was exactly 14 minutes. So what we'll do is hand it over to Kent. Oh, no, that's fine, because it looks like most of the time was ERVs and chromosome 2 fusion. So I appreciate you, sticking to two main topics there in lines of evidence. So, okay, Kent, we're going to hand it over to you, and we're going to give you equal time, 14 minutes, and then we'll get into a discussion. Go ahead, Kent, whenever you're ready. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Very frequently, it's facts are established, and then the conclusions are drawn that are wrong. It's a fact. Almost all the cars in America have the steering wheel on the left side. Therefore, they're all related. No. All the cars in England, or most of them, have the steering wheel on the other side, the wrong side, I would say. And so it doesn't prove anything. In the movie The Green Mile, it was a fact 2 girls were missing. A massive manhunt was organized. Okay? That's a fact. It's a fact John Coffey is found holding the 2 dead girls in the movie. Okay? No question. That's a fact. So this is a bit of evidence. Here's the evidence. He's found holding the 2 dead girls. Okay? I agree. Everybody agrees on that. It's a fact. John Coffey is arrested and executed for the crime. In the movie, that's a fact. He was found holding the girls. He was arrested. He was tried. A jury found him guilty, and he's executed. All a fact. It's a fact. This guy did it, not John Coffey. They drew the wrong conclusion. I think what we've seen tonight from Mark, he has looked at things like genetic similarity, which is a fact. There's a lot of similarities. But what does that prove? Does that prove a common ancestor? No. It could prove a common designer. It could be nothing at all. But it doesn't prove a common ancestor. I'm going to keep track tonight of how many times he refers to time, millions of years or a long time ago. So far, we got quite a few. See, time is the hero to the evolutionist. How does how does an amoeba turn to anything else? Well, given enough time, stop. There isn't any, you can't have all that time. There's lots of reasons, scientific ways to prove the Earth is not billions of years old. That's not the debate tonight. But you keep track yourself. Keep a hash mark on your notepad there. Time is essential to the atheist and evolutionist. It can't happen in a short amount of time. Let's see. 2 more things I wanted to get here on this one, 1920, and then I'll go back to what I wanted to say here. The Bible says God formed the eye. The eye is incredible. There are a lot of similarities in the different eyes of different animals. That's a fact. Lots of similarities. Some, they try to explain how it evolved slowly by a depression in the photosensitive photoreceptors. You can believe that if you want. And they say there are scars of evolution proving we have a common ancestor. No, the eye is incredibly designed, but they've got all the eyes going back to a common ancestor. They drew lines on paper and connected them. Well, that doesn't prove anything, okay? There are simple lens eyes, compound eyes, the simple corneal eye. I agree. Darwin said, to suppose that the eye could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd. Now, he went on to say he believed it anyway. And you mentioned something, Mark, tonight. A lot of scientists accept evolution. I want you folks to listening to the debate to watch how many times they try to slip that word accept in. No, the word is believe. They believe in evolution. You can only accept something that's a fact and been proven true. It is not a fact, it's not been proven true that humans and chimpanzees have a common ancestor. Because all anybody's ever seen in the history of humanity is chimpanzees make baby chimpanzees every time. So if we see that going now, I guess we can assume it's been the same in the past. If you want to imagine that chimpanzees and humans have a common ancestor, that's not science. That's a religious belief. Humans always make baby humans. There are no exceptions, none. If you wish to believe they came from something else, that's your religion. So watch how many times he uses the word, you have to accept evolution. No, you don't accept evolution. I accept cows can jump. I accept that fact. I believe there's a limit how high they can jump. They had trained cows to jump higher and have rodeos in Texas where they jump the cow, see who can jump the highest. I think the whole thing's dumb, but that's what they do. So if you took your cow to the gym and made him work out and took a lot of vitamins, do you think the cow could ever jump over the moon? Or is there a limit in there? I bet there's a limit how high cows can jump. I don't know if they've reached the limit yet or not. Next year, somebody might break the record, go a quarter inch higher. But they're not going to jump over the moon. Okay? So it's a fact they can jump, but it's not a fact that there's no limit to this. It's a fact there are variations within the genetic code. It's a fact there are over, 11,000 different species or 7,000 different species of apples. That's a fact. Therefore, does that prove apples are related to elephants? See, in your evolutionist mind, you don't get it. There are limits to all of these changes. There are limits to how far they can change. Yes, we can get 4,000 varieties of potatoes now. They might have had a common ancestor called a potato. And there's a limit. They've been trying to get bigger dogs for a long time. They got them up to the Great Dane. You think they'll ever get a dog as big as an elephant? No, there's a limit. Have they reached it? I don't know, probably getting close. But there are animals as big as an elephant, like an elephant. So I think you guys do not understand you don't accept the fact that there are limits to all of the changes that we've ever observed. You don't accept the fact that mosquitoes always make baby mosquitoes, hamsters always make baby hamsters, monkeys make baby monkeys, humans make baby humans. That's the fact. Now, if you wish to believe it was different in the past, well, then that's your belief. It's a religious belief. So I agree that there are genetic similarities. I can accept that fact. That does not prove common ancestry. I believe there are similarities in our chromosomes between us and the chimpanzee. That does not prove common ancestor. That might prove a common designer. The chimpanzee and the human have a lot of similarities in things they have to do. They got 2 eyes, they got 2 ears, they got 2 arms, fingers that bend, they got hair on the outside of their body, they got the tail on the back, the nose on the front. I think there are a lot of similarities because there's a common designer. So you're seeing this evidence. John Coffey's holding the girls. Yep. And you're coming to the wrong conclusion. You're saying, well, see, this proves a common, same with ERVs. You're seeing this evidence and coming to the wrong conclusion. Donnie wrote a whole book about the ERVs, or booklet. You can get that from Standing for Truth. The eye got to be one of the most complex things in the universe. 1 square inch of your retina has 137 million light-sensitive cells. You really think that happened by chance? Do you think the eye in your head, Mark, came from an amoeba? This is what it teaches. That's what you guys believe. The rods and the cones. The human eye has 3 types of cones. We could talk forever about that. How many colors can a human see? They can easily distinguish 100 shades. They're able to see about 1 million shades of colors. Wow. I think the human eye is much complicated than a dog. We have an incredible eyeball, and I think God ought to get the glory for it. Now, if you don't choose to glorify God for the eye, okay, do whatever you want. If you want to claim you got a common ancestor with an amoeba, okay, but that's not science. So that's my point. I think you guys have gone nuts with this trying to accept something that's simply a theory, not even a good theory. It's a religious belief. Let's see. Definition of evolution, 32. I have said for years that evolution has 6 different meanings. Cosmic evolution, which you guys do not want to talk about because you say that's not part of the theory, but it is. You have to have the origin of time, space, matter. What evolved? Where did it come from? You don't have an answer to that, and you skip that, and you're going to get angry for me bringing that up, but that's too bad. It's a fact. They have to have something to evolve. The universe, where did it come from? Where did time, space, matter come from? They say that it began in a Big Bang 13.772 billion years ago. Okay. What was here 13.773 billion years ago? Where did time come from? Where did space come from? They say the Big Bang was an explosion or a rapid expansion. Into what? Into space. Where did space come from? Then you have to have chemical evolution, the higher elements. Theory known as chemical evolution. The Big Bang supposedly made hydrogen. Well, how do you get all these other elements? How do you get all the uranium and platinum and gold and silver and brass out of all these different, brass is not an element, I'm saying. How do you get all these elements out of hydrogen gas? I'd like to learn how to make gold out of hydrogen gas. I think that'd be pretty cool, okay? Then you have to have stars evolving. Nobody's ever seen a star form. Never. We see them blow up. They said 2 weeks ago, I think it was, they said, oh, we saw a star form. No, you saw a dot appear. You're assuming it's a star forming. If it's a long ways away and it's a nova star blowing up, that would look like, whoa, wow, look, new dot. A new dot. Yeah, okay. It could have been a star blowing up. We've seen them blow up. We've seen them destroyed, lots of them. We've never seen them form. How do stars get formed? What is the importance of stellar evolution? It's part of it. We don't know how a single star managed to form. So let's see, I want to get up to something else here. I cover all this in my seminar. No one knows how stars form. But there's a lot of stars out there. Everybody could own 11 trillion of them to yourself. Never see one form. There should be 9.5 million stars, new stars forming every minute for 13.7 billion years. Organic evolution is another one you guys want to skip. How did life get started from non-living material? All these first 4 are essential before anything else matters. Nothing else matters. So we see changes. So we see similarities of chromosomes. So we see ERVs, okay? How did life get started? The world has been evolved and not created. They really believe that at Go Life Science, okay? I'll debate all you guys at the same time. New theory of organic evolution. This organic evolution is essential. Nobody knows how a mixture of lifeless chemicals first came into a living cell. Nobody knows that. It's part of a religion. They say it came from primordial soup from 1924. He proposed a theory on the origin of life that the chemicals from the soup combined in the right order to make something alive. One single cell is not simple. It's incredibly complicated. I'll show you here. Then you have what's called macroevolution, changing from one to another, which we never see. We see dogs produce dogs, big dogs and little dogs, but we never see anything else. Dog, wolf, coyote, and a banana probably had a common ancestor, except for the banana. God said they'll bring forth after their kind. That's all anybody's ever observed. That's science. If you wish to believe something else, you can believe it. Microevolution is a lousy word. We shouldn't use it, but they do. Variations happen within the same kind. Changes within a species or small group of organisms. Okay, I agree, but you guys want to make these family trees. We see these small changes. Cows can jump higher. Okay. Therefore, cows are related to broccoli? That's what you do. You draw a line on paper between a human and a bird and a dinosaur and a ladybug and broccoli or tree and a worm and say, see, common ancestor. This is pure propaganda. This is absolute stupidity to teach this as science. This isn't science. This is a bunch of lines drawn on paper. There are no transitional fossils. I want to get to something else here about the so-called simple living single ancestor. Let's see, right here. They say we all came from a single, let's see, all the many forms of life on Earth today came from a primitive unicellular organism. There is no such thing as a primitive unicellular organism. No such thing. But they draw these lines on paper back to, I got the wrong button here. Let's see. Dogs and wolves. I'm going to have to get back to home page. Primitive unicellular organism. I'm so sorry here. And I'm going to run out of time. I'll just do it this way. So I looked up how many different, there are 20,000 different kinds of single-celled organisms. 20,000 different kinds, like the amoeba and the paramecium. Okay, they're really, really complicated. Really complicated. There's no such thing as a simple unicellular organism. The flagellated paramecium, I'll just jump to this one here. Alt-DV 133. There. They have a little motor in their skin. We're talking a single-celled creature, the paramecium. The motor that turns the hair spins. It would take 8 million of these motors lined up side by side to go across an average human hair. That little motor spins 100,000 RPM. Let me see you build an engine that turns 100,000 RPM, okay? And then I think we'd have to say when you're all done building it, it was designed. This little motor spins the hair on the bacteria and lets him swim through his little world. You really think that happened by chance? I don't understand how you guys cannot see the incredible complexity in life and say, wow, God, you're amazing. When we see a dragster with a motor that's able to get the thing going, 300 miles an hour, we say, wow, those guys are good. I don't mind glorifying God for his creation. I feel bad for you, Mark. I can go look at the stars and say, wow, God, you're amazing. You go look at the stars and think, it all happened by itself, by chance. Okay, your choice. Best evidence for evolution, I think you got the three that you put on the table. All can be explained by a designer. That you gave evidence, but it can be interpreted differently, like John Coffey did not kill those girls. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, that is 14 minutes on the dot as well. So, gentlemen, Mark and Kent, the debaters for tonight, thank you so much for the visuals and the opening presentation. So we're jumping into an open discussion, but Mark, let's hand it to you since Kent just ended with his opening statement. There might be a few things you wanted to say before you, let's say pick whatever topic you want to take the direction in for the debate. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Yeah, so I just want to start off by pointing out that before the discussion, we kind of agreed on 2 to 3 topics because Kent complained that too many topics would, he couldn't follow them, he couldn't get up to them. Now, I just want to point out the dishonesty of somebody going through movies, Common Designer, amoebas, Darwin's thing, chimps and humans, variations genetic code, demonstrating limits, chance, Then he went on to the eye and how that came about, the universe, chemical evolution, cosmological evolution, stellar evolution, organic evolution, macroevolution, phylogenetic tree, the primitive unicellular organisms, kinds of bacteria and amoebas, biological motors. Now, this is not 2 to 3 topics, and for somebody that sits there and says, well, no, I can't handle too many, this is a scattershot. And so I just want to point out the dishonesty of that. And, you know, the Green Mile's a movie, Kent. It's not real, mate. It's not real. I just want to point that out. Now, first off, I'll address the Darwin thing, and we'll go through these one by one since you are nice enough to bring them all up. I noticed that you didn't really address my concerns at all. But for Darwin, what he said was that it seems like common sense that the eye could have been evolved. But he also mentioned it seems like common sense that the Earth could not be going around the sun. What he's basically saying is some things are counterintuitive, that you think that they are a certain way. And in this, you are exactly like flat earthers. You basically are saying, well, I can't believe that. It's an argument from incredulity. I can't believe that, therefore it's not true. And that's not the case. It's not the case at all. And so I'll address that one first and see what you've got to say about it. But I hope we can go through all of these, and I hope you can actually address what I've said instead of whatever scattershot this is.
Go ahead, Kent.
Okay, my computer's saving the program. I agree, there are many topics, but see, you want to jump right into similarities between, genetic similarities between animals. Where did these animals come from? How did life get started? It's a long process to get to living organisms at all. And I wish you guys would give an answer to that. Where did matter come from? Where did space come from? Where did time come from? Where did life come from? How did an amoeba learn to make arms? And your answer is always millions of years. So you gave 3 similarities. You said there are genetic similarities between a lot of different animals. I agree. That does not prove a common ancestor. We see animals producing babies today. Why don't they do it again? Why don't you get an ancestor why don't you get a chimpanzee or something similar to turn into a human again in the laboratory? Or pick something with a shorter generation time, like a bacteria or an amoeba. I found it here, 548, okay? Some unicellular organisms, according to the trees of life that you mentioned. These trees of life go back to a single-celled creature. 20,000 species are estimated to be in the ocean. Different types of unicellular organisms. They're not simple. They're really complicated. The amoeba has a genome size of 670 trillion base pairs in an amoeba, which you can't even see without a good microscope. 670 trillion base pairs in the genome. I think it had to be designed. I don't know what's complicated about that. A lily, 90 trillion base pairs in the genome. And you show a picture of the dark and light sections of these, chromosome 2, et cetera. Unwind that thing and see if it's really similar, okay? I think I could pick up books out of my library, and I bet I could find a lot of books in here that have similar number of pages. Look, this book's got 300 pages, and that one's got 304 pages. That proves they're related. No. I bet if we unwound it, looking at the the letters in a sequence, we'd find a big difference. And I think you'd find a huge difference in humans and chimpanzees if you don't just count the number of chromosomes, but unwind that chromosome and type out the code. There's probably some similarities in how these animals make hair because it requires the same code. Microsoft Word and Microsoft PowerPoint have millions of lines of identical code. But they're different programs, and they're designed. All of them are designed. So the code is designed. Humans only have 3.2 billion. Wow, what happened here? So saying it simpler, E. coli has 4,435 genes. It's complicated. You guys want to just make everybody accept the idea that it came by chance. You couldn't drop letters of the alphabet and form a sentence in eternity. It'll never happen. And then, of course, you'd have to answer who made the letters and who's dropping them. But you guys time is your hero. Mark, I wish you could see. You believe these things happen by chance over time. That's not science. Where is any animal today evolving into something else?
This is
You
just
claim-
this is
Yeah, you claim humans and chimps have a common ancestor. Where are we seeing it today? Go ahead.
This is a gish gallop again. You're basically throwing out thing after thing after thing after thing, so I can't respond. So I'll grab the time it takes to respond to each and every single one of these. You said a long process. Where does it come from? Biological evolution doesn't get into. Well, they think that the best explanation is abiogenesis, but that's not theory like evolution is, because it doesn't have the same level of support. Now, it seems to be the best explanation. I don't 100% believe in it. I don't know where it comes from, but not knowing where things come from doesn't invalidate the evolutionary fact. And that's where you've got it completely wrong. Evolution doesn't address where the life came from. It only addresses diversification and common descent of life. That's it. And so you're basically making a straw man. For those in the audience, a straw man is when you can't attack the real person, you can't attack the real argument. So you pump a whole bunch of straw into a dummy and then whack away at that, thinking it makes you seem strong and big. But you're not actually addressing the argument, which is biological evolution, the diversity of life and not the origin. So you're completely missing that. And I've got a lot to go through here. Chimpanzee to human. As I said that specific example, that wouldn't happen, Kent, because nothing crosses branches of the tree of life. I'm not sure if you're getting older and you're just not listening or something like that, but I already addressed this. And the same for a unicellular organism. Why doesn't it do it again, make complex life? It's probably in the process of doing so, but it's not like it will give birth to a human like you suggested, because that doesn't happen. You're talking about crossing branches on that phylogenetic tree, which doesn't happen. Primitive amoebas, yes, there were more primitive prokaryotes and simpler celled organisms back ages ago. And you're basically taking a modern contemporary example and going, oh, well, it's really complicated. Yeah, it's really complicated because the cells back then were a lot simpler than they are today. Why? Because they've evolved. The books have a number of pages. I mean, this is just ridiculous. A genetic code is not pages. We're talking about genetic code. And you're basically saying, oh, it's coincidence that they all look similar. Just pure fluke, just a big coincidence. Like books in pages have coincidentally have the same amount of page. It's not coincidence and it's not chance. Like natural selection doesn't operate by chance. Mutations arise by chance, but natural selection is deterministic. Whichever animal is fitter for its environment will be the one to succeed. And there is a little bit of chance involved, but it isn't complete chance. There is a process at work here. Millions of lines of identical code for some program. Yeah, but code, when you copy it, it doesn't create mutations. It doesn't change, does it, Ken? You copy your Word or your copy of Windows, it stays exactly the same. And that's what you're missing. There are processes at work here that you're not accounting for, just putting your head in the dirt and saying, well, I'm not gonna accept that they exist. When they're copied, they're exactly the same. That is not what's happening. As you've pointed out, they do change. Organisms change, and you've already admitted that. Now, time isn't my ally. It's just the age of the Earth. It's just what nearly every single scientist on the face of the Earth agrees with through multiple different fields. And the only people that think the Earth is younger are people with a vested faith interest in it. Evolution is science. There are testable predictions we can make. There are things that we can test. There's experiments that we can do. It absolutely is science, and that was actually determined in a court of law. And I'm sure you're familiar with court of law, Kent. That ID, intelligent design, is not a science, while evolution absolutely is. Kitzmiller versus Dover.
Okay, Mark, you rely on this genetic code being copied and copied and copied and turning into something else. Okay, we've never seen that. You can believe that. I took a piece of paper, Darwin's book, copied the page out of on a copying machine. I ran the copy through the copy, then ran the copy of the copy through the copier. After 5 generations, here it is. After 10 generations, there it is. After 15 generations, there it is. It's hardly readable. If you think you're a copy off a copy off a copy for billions of generations back to an amoeba or some single-celled creature, this is not logical that the code could gain. Nobody's ever seen it gain information. It loses information every time it's copied. We don't see, science is what we can observe. And when you say evolution is science, you're thinking of a different meaning of the word evolution than I am. I agree, variations happen. We now have hundreds of varieties of cows, 250 varieties of cows, mostly bred by man to get more milk or more beef or stand the heat better or something like that. And most of them wouldn't survive in the wild, but there's 250 kinds of cows, had a common ancestor called a cow. That's where it stops. But you don't see, do you believe a cow has a common ancestor with you, Mark Reed? Do you have a common ancestor with a cow?
Yes, we do. We have a common ancestor millions of years ago when the primates split off from other animals. But we've never seen something copied and turned into something else. What I want to ask you, and you've already admitted that we do see animals changing over time. A dog breeder will change dogs over time. That is something that we all see, and you're not even disputing it, and I understand that. But first, where is the physical mechanism, and can you demonstrate the physical mechanism for putting a limit on change? You can point to papers, you can point to research, you can provide your own research, but because a cow jumping over a moon, we know that in physics there is a physical limiter to how much muscle mass you can get, how high that you can translate that energy into. There's a lot of physical limits that we can absolutely describe using physics and other scientific means. But where is your limit? Where do you have any physical limit that you can demonstrate in the scientific field to the limits that you're claiming exists on evolution? And that you think microevolution turns into macroevolution. Now, a cell division is not a photocopier. It's not. Like you're talking about, scanning light. This is a false analogy. It just doesn't make any sense. You're talking about an optic, like a photograph almost, or a scan of something being equal to cell division. That's just a ridiculous statement. There is so much different about the way that they work in the systems that are being processed here that the only thing I would agree with is things that copy develop mutations, like you're trying to say there. Now, it loses information. No, it doesn't. You can have insertions, which you gain information. The sequence changes, therefore it's new information. That is absolutely across the world of genetics acknowledged. So, gene insertions are where accidentally another gene is placed in there. Gene duplications duplicate another gene. Those are new information. And I really would like you to address how the ERVs got into us and the chimpanzee when the odds are against it so highly. When the odds are ridiculously against that happening. How did that happen?
Well, you've given about 12 topics here. You're doing the Gish Gallop and accusing me of it.
You brought it up.
The variations that we see, you asked, are there limits? What are the physical limits? Well, first of all, you got a great barrier going from a single-celled anything to multicellular. Where are the two-celled creatures in the world today? Not a colony, but a two-celled creature, or three-celled, or four-celled. I agree they can colonize and work together to do things, but that's not a single individual. We don't see it happening. We see a lot of single-celled creatures, 20,000 different kinds, which you guys all believe came from a dot of near nothing or nothing exploding, a singularity, rapidly expanding. I think you don't have a good theory that goes back to zero. I do. God created everything in 6 days. I take that by faith, and I'm not demanding that be taught to all the kids in school. You guys take by faith it all came from a dot and want that taught in school. So the limits that we see, your first barrier is getting from non-living material to living material. First of all, getting matter from anywhere. Where did matter come from? That's a limit, okay? How do you explain that? How did this matter come alive? There's a limit. Do it again in the laboratory. I want to watch it happen this time. See, science, I think you have a different meaning for the word science. Science comes from the Latin word "scire," which means to know. What do we know? Well, we know life begets life like itself. We know cows produce cows and dogs produce dogs. We know that. We do not know that they have a common tree of life, like you guys want to put in the books here. 1, 2, 3, 1939, I think it is. No, let's see. Anyway, we do not know that they have a common ancestor. You believe that. You believe you have a common ancestor with a cow. Okay, because somebody drew a chart and put lines on paper. Okay, great. They can do all that they want. But that's not, my point is, this science is what we can observe. We don't observe. You referred many, many times already in this debate to millions of years ago they had a common ancestor. That's not science. The fact that there are genetic similarities, great. Why would that preclude a common designer? The Honda Accord and the Honda Prelude have a lot of similarities because Honda builds them both. That's not proof of a common ancestor, it's proof of a common designer. Where do you get the idea that these similarities, the only way it can be interpreted is common ancestor? Why couldn't the genetic similarities be common designer? Same guy wrote the code. What is wrong with that theory, Mark?
All right, so I just want to point out that you didn't address my question at all on the limits of where this exists. You talked about, and I didn't gish gallop, every single topic bar one question was brought up by you, Kent, and only because you started talking about limits. So every single point of the last statement was addressing what you said. You gish galloped and I had to address them all. That's not me. If you don't want me to talk about excess topics, stop bringing them up. That's simple. Single cell to multicellular, why doesn't it happen? It does. We've had an algae turned from a single-celled algae into a multicellular organism. I believe Atheist Jr. brought this one up for you. It was a single-celled green algae, Chlamydomonas reinhardti, and that basically was a single-cell algae which turned into a multicellular creature. Now, this isn't a colony. This isn't a colony at all. The reason why is because a colony, when a colony has one of them leave, it can survive on its own. Now, these organisms couldn't survive on their own. They were a true multicellular creature. So that has actually been happened and demonstrated. Now, all of this is ridiculous because Kent sort of dishonestly says, well, I only want 2 to 3 topics. And then he expects me to explain every step of the origin of everything in the universe, like everything in the universe, from the Big Bang, which isn't even a part of this discussion, all the way up to abiogenesis, which again isn't even part of this discussion, and every step in between, which is ridiculous. Some things we don't know, Ken, but just because we don't know doesn't mean that you get to insert God. That is God of the gaps, okay? God of the gaps. And that's exactly what you're trying to do. If I can't answer a question, then you get to put God in. No, you don't. Where did matter come from? Yeah, probably, I mean, I would guess, and I would probably say that the best explanation we have is from some sort of quantum field, but I don't know that for sure. He didn't address my question. He didn't say, how do we know there is a fixed point for evolution and how to demonstrate it to the scientific community, because he can't. He can't address it. He can't demonstrate it. He can't do any of that. Now, just with your Honda thing, what's interesting is that Honda produces stuff like concept cars, which are original cars that don't use parts from factory models. They are a concept. And we don't see concept cars in nature. We always see them connected through the tree of life from more similar things and similar organisms down to the more simpler ones as we go back during time. Where's the concept car of biological life? Doesn't exist. And if you could produce that, that would be great, but you can't. So I'd like you to maybe answer my question on the limits of evolution and how you can demonstrate there is actual physical limits like we have with a cow. And then maybe I'll get into some of the other plethora of points that you brought up in your introduction.
And Mark, I do have, I'm not sure if that's what you wanted, but I do have your scientists have witnessed a single-celled algae. I've got that up on screen for you. I'm not sure if that was your...
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
I mean, I was just bringing it up, yeah. Cheers, thank you.
Appreciate it. Go ahead, Ken.
I think I did answer your question about the limits. There are physical limits. There's a limit. How did life get started? There's a limit to how big things can get. Gravity would affect it at some point. I don't think you're going to get a cow to jump over the moon. I don't think you're going to get an amoeba to turn to anything else but an amoeba. This is the first I've heard of. I heard of it. I haven't studied it yet about this single-celled creature. Some scientists in the laboratory caused this to happen with the green algae. I'll do some research on that. Thank you, sir. Do you believe that's evidence that it happened long ago in the past? Or is that just something they're able to do today in a controlled experiment? We see amoeba produce baby amoeba pretty rapidly. You can believe anything you want after that. 20,000 different species of single-celled creatures. And they're really complicated. You think the amoeba with 670 trillion genome-sized base pairs happened by chance? I'm baffled that a grown man could believe such a thing. But that's your choice. But I don't think it's science. It's too complex. There are complex. You talk about the odds of something happening with your, the chromosome 2 fusion or the ERVs. We can get into that. Donnie did a good book on that. Maybe, Donnie, you can have a whole debate with a guy just on ERVs. Take 3 hours on that one. But the fact that there are some similarities in ERVs or in genetic similarity, again, you say, well, we don't know where matter came from. We don't know where time came from. Okay, so if I grant you that, you can have time, space, matter. Why can't you grant me, okay, God exists? Well, therefore, God can do anything he wants. In your little mind, time can do anything it wants. Time can make an amoeba turn to a human. Do you believe over billions of years, a single-celled creature turned to a human? Is time the hero of the plot for you?
Yeah, I believe that over time, a single-celled organism can evolve into complex life forms. That's essentially what evolution says. Now, again, you said not chance. Yeah, it's not chance. It's not chance at all. No, not chance. And I really want to hammer this home, Kent, because you don't. I'm really not sure why you're not listening. It is not chance. The process of evolution is deterministic, and it's determined by the creature's adaptations to the environment that they're in. Mutation is chance, but it's deterministic. It basically means the fittest for that environment will survive. So stop saying chance. It's not chance. When you have a gorilla that's small and frail because he's come out weak, and a gorilla that's big and strong because he's had a genetic advantage, it is not chance that the big strong gorilla survives. That's not chance. It is deterministic. So you've got that completely and utterly wrong. I'm not even going to start on how life got started. I mean, it isn't the focus of this debate. Abiogenesis is our best case scenario. We are doing experiments with that. Whereas the experiments that ID's doing, intelligent design, maybe you could point out an experiment that intelligent design can do if you want it taught in schools. What is an experiment that you can do that is scientific and can demonstrate the truth of your premise?
Fair question. Where is the scientific experiments that there's an intelligent designer? I cannot prove scientifically in the laboratory there's a God. I cannot prove scientifically sitting here in Lenox, Alabama, that somebody made this pen. I don't know who made it. I don't know where it was made. No name on there. Oh, yeah, there is. Clip lock. No, that goes here. Never mind. Okay. But I think the logic and common sense would say these things don't happen by chance. Somebody had to make it. When you see something as complex as a single-celled creature with a little motor in its skin, some of them have a whole bunch of these little hairs all over their body. They can swim different directions. The paramecium, single-celled. This motor's turning 100,000 RPM. That happened by natural selection. So if one could only turn 90,000 RPM, it didn't make it. So you guys don't realize, maybe you do, your theory, natural selection works, but it can select. It doesn't create anything. It selects. If you took all the dogs in the world, loose, put them in Alaska, turned them loose, the first winter, most of them would freeze. They're not ready for cold weather. Those that already have long hair and short legs and thick body, they would survive. And after a couple of generations, you'd have all wolves or huskies up there. I agree. Nature can select certain body types to survive in a certain environment. But all it does is select. I think the fastest wolf is probably going to get the deer. Well, why don't they get wings on the wolf and fly after the deer? The natural selection, you guys want to give natural selection a creative force. It doesn't create anything. It selects. Where is the evidence of any creature getting new information that can be passed on to the whole population? What this leads to directly, and I think you know this, Mark, natural selection thinking leads to the best ones survive. Well, Adolf Hitler felt the same way. Let's take this blonde-haired, blue-eyed Norwegians and Germans and let them survive and kill everybody else. Let's speed up the process of natural selection. Let's do it with artificial selection. That's why I cover how dangerous this theory is. It leads right to Hitler and Stalin. And the Georgia Guidestones that got blown up. There should only be 500 million people on the planet. Oh, yeah? I bet the guys that built the Georgia Guidestones think they're the ones that ought to be in that 500 million. So natural selection only selects. It doesn't create anything. And it leads to completely, seriously wrong thinking that the inferiors ought to be eliminated for the good of the race, of course. We don't see it happening. We don't see new information. We don't see amoeba produce anything but an amoeba, ever. And they've watched it in the laboratory billions and billions of generations, and they're still making baby amoeba. But you want to turn the amoeba to a human. And you can imagine that it happened. Well, I'm glad you got a vivid imagination, but it's not science. So I'll grant you, I'll let you start with billions of years. I'll let you start with life. Whoa. Why don't you let me start with God? It's, God can do it. You think billions of years can do it. All we've ever seen is dogs and coyotes and wolves produce the same kind of animal. 40 subspecies of wolf, wolves of the world. There's all kinds of different dog type animals. That's all we've ever seen. They're probably the same family. Are they the same species? No. I don't think they care where we classify them, what species we put them in. They don't care. They just do what they do, okay? Man has decided to divide things up into species and families and kind. The dogs don't care at all, okay? 19 species of coyotes, all right? Common ancestor, 339 breeds of dogs. They have baby dogs every time. So, but you guys imagine that dogs and amoeba, dogs have a common ancestor, came from an amoeba. I'm just pointing out, you guys should admit you have a religious belief. You don't have science. You should stop making everybody teach this like it is science. Evolution, in spite of what you said earlier, evolution is not science. It's not observable. The word science is seer. What do we know? Latin. What do we know from observation, testing, and experimentation? All observation has told us dogs produce dogs. But you want me to believe dogs came from an amoeba. I wish you could understand. That's a religion, not science. But you'll never believe that. Go ahead.
Yeah, getting off topic again. You're bringing up Nazis and Stalinists. I mean, I could point to Godwin's law here that sooner or later in a conversation, one side will be compared to the Nazis. So it looks like that Kent's doing it this time for emotional appeal. Absolutely ridiculous. Nobody is suggesting, and I'm happy to have a morality conversation, but I don't think it's the forum for this one. So I don't know why you're going here. Just an obfuscation from the fact that you can't provide a relative answer for anything that I ask. Nobody's suggesting we should use natural selection as a moral or societal process. No one's suggesting that. It's a brutal process. In the wild, it is what's used, but we're not suggesting that's optimum. So Kent's thing of Nazis and Stalinists is just absolutely ridiculous. It's so flawed. And just an appeal to emotion to try and say, hey, you bad because you think this thing exists. Just because I think natural selection exists doesn't mean that I advocate for it to be used. That's ridiculous. Yeah, and he just pointed out purely what evolution is. Most of the dogs will freeze. The ones with long hair will survive. It'll select the long hair. The new information where you said it doesn't come. It comes from mutations, Ken. Mutations are the missing piece that you've completely ignored there. It mutates, then it gets long hair as a mutation that is selected for in the population, fixed in the population, and then you'll get dogs with longer and longer hair. Why don't wolves grow wings? Same reason a cow can't jump to the moon, because there's physical constraints on what they do. And when you have the idea of wings, it takes a lot of muscle mass in the pectoral muscles in order to lift something up. It's why you don't get birds the size of elephants. It's why birds have been selected for hollow bones. you need to reduce the weight. And then that has consequences in turn where that wolf with lightweight bones and, not a lot of body mass because it has to be lighter is not bringing down the elk that it's chasing after. Things are adapted for their environment, not what you want them to be. And just because you wish that, the wolf should be able to grow wings, no, nobody thinks that. Again, you said amoebas give birth. No, nothing crosses across the branches of the phylogenetic tree. You don't have amoebas, modern amoebas, giving birth to any other modern animal. It evolves outward. I mean, I suppose I could get up a trick because you keep saying this over and over and over. So, I don't know if you could share my screen. I just want to sort of point out where Kent's gone wrong here. And I'll just get up a phylogenetic tree. So I think these, so these are the eukaryotes. These are you keep saying amoebas. Just let's go with bacteria because they're kind of close side by side. You don't get things crossing over. So these branches, you don't get modern bacteria giving birth to, say, a mouse. They don't cross over. They only go outwards. That's all they do, outwards, not over from one to the other, just outwards. Okay, so if you're going to talk about evolution, stop stuffing your straw man, stop putting up a dummy for you to beat away at and feel good about. Just address the actual argument because nobody expects any kind of what you're describing to happen. And it takes so long to happen. Why don't we see this? Why don't we see that? Because not enough time has occurred for it to actually happen. But we have seen single-celled organisms turn into multicellular organisms. We can tell where your pen came from, by the way. We can analyze the plastic. So yes, we can do experiments to show where your pen came from. So it's a terrible analogy because we can analyze the plastic. We can look at marks on it. We can get similar examples of pens that have been produced by certain factories. I mean, what do you think that CSIs do and other scientists do? They can analyze this stuff, whereas you cannot provide a single experiment. My ask was for a single experiment, and you said, nope, can't do it. And that is why ID is not science and evolution is. It's because evolution can make the testable predictions, the experimentation, the peer-reviewed study, all of the things that science requires, evolution can do, and intelligent design cannot. And that has been tested time after time in a court of law. You may not have respect for courts of law. I do. It has been thoroughly shown that evolution is a science. It doesn't matter what you say.
Okay. There's textbook. I collect textbooks, and that's my complaint, is what they teach. This is religion, not science. This has all the animals, all the fungi, and all the plants having a common ancestor. This, similar to yours, with less detail, shows there are varieties of horses. There are varieties of dolphins. But they show them going back to a common ancestor. We see dolphins produce dolphins and horses produce horses, and we get quite a few varieties of horses. But everything inside that circle, all those lines you had on paper, are religion. You believe this. You don't see this. We see the branches of the tree, of horse tree. I think all the horses might have had a common ancestor called a horse. I think there are 64 different types of herons. They might have had a common ancestor called a heron. 167 different varieties of ducks might have had a common ancestor called a duck. That's science that we can observe. You have to imagine, if you go back millions of years, that they're connected back here to a common ancestor. This is what you don't see or will never admit. You don't know that the horse and the dolphin came from an amoeba and was a common ancestor. Natural selection can only select. You said it can create mutations cause the long hair on the dogs. They already have hair in the gene code. The ability to make hair is part of their genetic code. They already have the ability to make longer hair and shorter hair. Some are selected for short hair. I think if they lived in a hot climate, those with long hair might not make it and couldn't make any babies, and all the short-haired dogs would survive, like the dingo or the ones in the desert area. I think nature selects, but it doesn't add new information. None of them have wings to fly. And you said they have hollow bones. Birds were selected for hollow bones. There's a whole lot more complexity to that than you understand. Birds have a whole lot more than just hollow bones. That's one part of it. They have incredible wing structure and heart structure that's able to pump the blood really fast. Eyesight. There's a million things have to go into a bird that make it different. The ducks, for instance, we've got ducks here. At the end of mating season, the male's duck penis falls off, and he grows a new one. How did that get selected for? And how did the first one make it? At the end of mating season, oh no, he just decided to grow a new one? This is one of trillions of examples that can be given of things that could not possibly have evolved. They had to be designed. And I agree with your family tree. At the outer part, sure, there's a variety of horses, there's a variety of rats, there's a variety of amoeba, there's a variety of rabbits. That doesn't prove they're connected, though. Not at all. This whole family tree is speculation, religious belief. Even if it were true, it wouldn't be science, because we can't show that. Science is what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. I want to watch an amoeba turn to anything other than amoeba. Show me the experiment. It doesn't happen. Show me the experiment of any horse producing anything other than a horse. We've watched, and I used to raise hamsters, short generation time. You can get several generations in a year. Okay, why don't you turn the hamster to something else? We don't see it, Mark. I wish you could understand. You believe in evolution. It's not science. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It is science. It's been, as I said, Kitzmiller versus Dover. It was found to apply by a Christian judge, I might add, to be evolution fulfills all the criteria of a science. And it is probably the most tested scientific theory in the history of science. The guy that I was referring to, Francis Collins, who is a very, very devout Christian and is a geneticist and ran the Human Genome Project, said that you have a better chance of overturning the theory of gravity than the theory of evolution, and that is a fact. So it's not a religion. We don't have to imagine it. I'll bring up the chromosome 2 fusion, where you basically had telomeres in the center and 2 centromeres. Didn't address that in the slightest, Kent, and I want to know how that happens by pure chance, or it just happens to happen where we predict it to. How did they know to make those predictions? Is that something that they just guessed at and suddenly came true? And as for the duck penis, well, it probably atrophied to conserve energy or to conserve certain resources. I'm sure that, and I'm not a geneticist. I do want to make that clear. I do not have a genetics background, so I am only sort of speculating hypothesis that perhaps it was in the duck's best interest to not have that organ during certain times. And then when it's mating season, obviously he needs it. That could be a very, very useful mutation. I'll point out other useful mutations like tetrachromia in humans, where some women have an extra cone in their eye to detect 4 colors and not 3. They can actually see colors way better. If that woman needed those to survive, needed a better color designation to survive, then that would be a huge advantage. I do notice that Kent's answered none of my questions. He basically has no answers whatsoever to ERVs, especially, the chromosome 2 fusion. I'd love to hear that from you, Kent. Hopefully we can get something out of you that actually addresses my presentation instead of just sort of claiming these random things for no reason.
And gentlemen, Kent, before you respond, I think this might have to be the last response, just because we got a ton of questions too, and we're going on the hour and 20-minute mark. It's been a real fantastic discussion, lots of great points discussed. So let's make this the last. We'll say a couple minutes of discussion for the discussion portion, but we're also going to have concluding statements as well in order for us to wrap up our thoughts. So, okay, go ahead, Kent.
Okay, we'll have a whole separate debate on ERVs. Donnie, you wrote a book about this, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. It was just discovered in the last 20 years or whenever it was. And so you guys have been teaching evolution a long time before that. Here's 2014 article about that endogenous retroviruses, critical role in the body's immune defense system. We'll save that for another debate. But I want to stick with your first point, which I tried to make the debate one topic at a time. We do ramble off on other things. You said genetic similarity is evidence for common ancestry. I pointed out with the Green Mile movie that you can look at the facts and come to the wrong conclusion. I did answer your question. It does not prove common ancestor. It could prove common designer. Don't say I didn't answer your question. Yes, I did. I did answer your question. There are physical limits to all kinds of things. What we observe is science is what we can observe. We observe dogs produce dogs. That's it. We've never observed a dog come from a non-dog or turn into a non-dog. And you say there's no crossover between the branches. The branches don't even exist. The whole tree doesn't exist. You made up all of it. You drew a bunch of lines on paper and connected an elephant with an amoeba. You guys think somehow through natural selection, an amoeba had a beneficial mutation that got him, part of a trunk and a little bit longer trunk, and pretty soon, it turned to an elephant over billions and trillions and quadrillions of generations. This is not science. It's not observable. It's a religious belief. I resent paying for that to be taught. I resent brainwashing kids with that dumb theory. I think we should teach them science in science class. Science says dogs produce dogs every time. Ask any cow, ask any breeder. I had a family come to my seminar once. They said, we've been in the dog breeding business, selling them for 100 years. 3 generations, our family's done this. She said, Brother Hovind, the lady said, I can tell you right now, you give me 20 or 30 generic mutts, just pick any mutt. Maybe it was 50 mutts. She said, we'll selectively breed them and then get the Great Dane and the Chihuahua and everything in between in 100 years. Selective breeding works. Natural selection works. It doesn't create anything. They never turned the dog into anything else. And there are limits. They got down to the toy Chihuahua now, 100% useless. But they're never going to get a dog as small as a flea. There are animals as small as a flea, like a flea. And they got a digestive system, reproductive system. They can jump like how many times their body height? It's incredible. Fleas are incredible. Why don't they get a dog that small? There are limits. Of course there are limits. There are genetic limits, obviously, and there are physical limits. There's lots of things limit how far they can go. That's why I said you're never going to get a cow to jump over the moon. You might get a cow to jump a little higher. There's limits on the human race. Run the 100-yard dash. Have they broke their record yet? They might break it by 1/10 of a second, but they're never going to run the 100-yard dash in 1 second. I'll tell you that. There are limits. We have seen there are all these family trees. You guys ignore the limits. You want to connect a horse and a dolphin by drawing lines on paper back to an amoeba. That's not science. You can imagine it all you want, but it's not science. I know we got a million questions, Donnie, and it's late, and I got a long day tomorrow, but go ahead. Take over.
Okay, thank you, Kent. Thank you, Mark. Mark, I understand there's probably a few points there that you want to address, and that's why we've got a 5-minute concluding statement. So we'll use this time to wrap up our thoughts, wrap up our points, make any final arguments that we feel are important to the topic. So, Mark, we're going to hand it over to you. You've got 5 minutes. Then we'll give Kent 5 minutes, and then we're going to get to some audience questions. So whenever you're ready, Mark, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, I didn't cover as much as I would like out of Kent's sort of opening, because he did go through like 30, 40 different topics. I don't know how many, but there was a lot. So evolution isn't by chance. It isn't this whole idea of, things just happen randomly and suddenly it produces this thing. That isn't what happens, and that's not what anybody is saying. So as I said before, when Kent says this, it is like a lot of things that he does is punching at a straw man. He's basically creating a false opponent, hitting it, and then looking really pleased that he's doing well. It's not the real argument. Mutations are random. They happen randomly in things. And even an ERV that I was talking about earlier can be inserted into your genetic code. And if that code is changed with mutations like substitution or in gene insertion, it can not only turn off, but it can actually turn out to be beneficial for you. And that's one of the ways we can sort of co-opt a viral sequence to act for us instead of against us. Mutations happen randomly, but natural selection isn't random. As the example that I pointed out, a big, strong animal will get selected over a smaller one. We see the sort of limits being pushed all the time. Dogs are constantly breaking the biggest dog ever, biggest dog ever, biggest dog ever, as breeders breed them towards that property. And we see that broken year after year without any signs of really stopping. How long have we been breeding dogs for? And how many times has the world record for the biggest dog been broken? It's just that it happens so slowly, you've got to see beyond your own lifespan. Kent wants it to happen in, 100 years, it has to all change into some other animal. I'm sorry that is not the reality of what evolution says. Again, it's another straw man he is beating at. It is another fake opponent, because that's not what evolution says. He says he wants to see a horse come from an amoeba. A modern amoeba will not produce a horse. That is, again, another straw man. It is not what we are saying, and Kent has been told enough that he should know it. And it kind of shows a little bit of dishonesty, because he should know that. An amoeba will evolve into some other creature unless you're doing it by, you are selecting for what traits you want. It will be to the best fit with its environment through random mutations coming up, and those mutations being selected by the ones that are able to breed, and therefore the traits are fixed in that lineage. This doesn't disprove a God. Evolution is a science. It's been tried many times in a court of law. It is a science. Intelligent design is not. Kent can't even come up with one experiment. He can't come up with any mechanism, not just saying, oh, there are limits. What is the mechanism? How does it happen? He doesn't have an answer. He hasn't answered the question. He's got no limits. He's got no experiments. He's got nothing to show how people would study intelligent design in a lab. You can't. How are you supposed to get an experiment? I mean, I'd love to know, but Kent can't seem to provide anything. Whereas evolution, you have multiple experiments, analysis of genes. Every example that Kent brings up is a false analogy. It's terrible. And again, just to reiterate, evolution being true doesn't destroy your God or prove it wrong or nullify your Christian. You're welcome to those beliefs. I would support that you can believe in that, but it's not in a place for the science classroom where evolution 100% is. Your God has its place in school. It's called theology, which is different than science. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for that 5-minute concluding statement. Okay, we're going to hand it over to Kent. Kent, you have 5 minutes as well for a concluding statement, and then we'll get into some questions and wrap it up. So go ahead, Kent. Floor is yours.
All right. I think at any debate, we should define some terms. We probably should have done this at the beginning. I downloaded this today. What does the word evolution mean? The process by which different kinds of living organisms are thought to have developed and diversified from earlier forms during the history of the Earth. Oh. The gradual development of something of simpler to more complex form. We don't see this, okay? Downloaded today. Evolution is a process of gradual change that takes place over many generations, during which species of animals, plants, or insects slowly change some of their physical characteristics. The evolution of plants and animals. Again, that's not observable. This is a statement of faith. Read it. A process of gradual change that takes place over many generations. Well, then it's outside of science. You guys don't get it. No, it's not science. In this section, we define evolution as it is understood in modern biology. It applies to ecology. Evolution is defined as the change of the inherited traits of a population of organisms through successive generations. When living organisms reproduce, they pass off to their progeny a collection of traits. I agree with that. But you have to believe that these changes can add up to something. We now have 7,000 varieties of apples. They've been watching them pass on their traits to the next generation, and they always become apples. Always. Never an exception. But you guys believe passing on these the changed inherited traits can change an amoeba to an elephant. Amoebas are still making babies all the time, about every 8 hours. Where are they changing to anything other than an amoeba? Define evolution, Stephen Jay Gould. Descent with modification from pre-existing species. Oh, okay. I descended from my parents. They descended from their parents. I bet it goes back I bet they had parents too. I bet if we keep going back, it's always going to be human. Always going to be human. So when we observe something with a short generation time like amoeba, all we see is amoeba produce amoeba. You want to imagine, if you go back in time, which we cannot do, that it was something else. It's not science. So the word evolution has 6 different meanings. I stick by that. You guys skip the first 5 because they're embarrassing to you. You can't answer it. Evolution. Evidence from fossils, evidence from structure, evidence from molecular biology. It's a typical textbook. I got a bunch on the shelf. Natural selection. Natural selection works. It only selects. Evolution is a fact, not theory. Birds arose from non-birds and humans from non-humans. Whoa. No person who pretends to any understanding of the natural world can deny these facts. I deny them. I deny birds ever came from anything other than a bird, and humans always came from humans. I deny the idea that birds and humans have a common ancestor. So this is my objection is it's a religious belief. What evidence do they give? Well, you can have all the theories you want. I want to get to something else here. They say mutations happen. I agree. They say mutations make something new and better. I disagree. Where's the good mutations? Then they say natural selection makes it survive and take over. This is what you said tonight, Mark. Evolution's a religion of death. The one that has the mutation gets to survive. The rest of them have to die. Mutations are the original source of variation in population, shown by the many varieties of roses. I bet all the roses had a common ancestor called a rose. Darwin said it's a wonderful fact that all plants and all animals through all time and space should have it related to each other. This is typical propaganda. This is a lie. No matter how numerous they may be, mutations do not produce any kind of evolution. Pierre Gross, who believed in evolution, said mutations aren't going to do it. All they do is rearrange existing information. Here's a mutation, a 5-legged bull. It didn't add any new information. He already had the code to make a leg. It made one in the wrong spot. Okay? There is no scientific evidence to support the evolution theory except lies proven wrong years ago. Here's a mutated sheep, short-legged. No new information is added. They capitalized on it, said, wow, we can get more of them on the short decks of the ships. Let's make this one breed. Okay, here's a 2-headed turtle. That's a mutant. It's not ninja. They don't make double-neck turtleneck sweater. Rearranging the letters of the word Christmas will never get you Xerox, zebra, or queen. 4-winged fly. This biology book gives an example of a mutation. A fly with 4 wings. It can't fly. It's not a beneficial mutation. But then it shows a bad one and says, beneficial mutations is how it works. Oh, really? Why don't they show us a good mutation? One guy said, sickle cell anemia is a good mutation. Oh, yeah? Tell that to the people who have it. Anyway, we're out of time here. But I would like, you think beneficial mutations is going to drive an amoeba to an elephant over billions of years. That is pure propaganda. Religion. Believe that if you want, Mark. It's not science.
All right, Kent and Mark, that concludes the concluding statements. Gentlemen, thank you for the very engaging and memorable debate. So let's get into some questions then. How we typically format the Q&A period is whoever the question is for, we're going to make sure they get the last word, and that way we will move along smoothly. So let me make sure to get to the super chats first, and we'll kind of go from there. So I should say there are some super chats that came in. Looks like there's 2 after shows. So there's one on James W. and Amy Newman's channel. And then there's another one on LPP channel. So logical, plausible, probable. Okay, here we go. Let's get to the first question. So super chat comes in from Patty Smith. Appreciate the support. Question is for you, Mark. So she asks, can Mark explain why we cannot even see a new folded protein being made? And not talking about repeats, duplicates, novel protein folds, etc. Mark, go ahead. Oh, Mark, I think you're muted on your own end.
No, I didn't do that. I think even though we can't see some things, we can, like, basically science isn't about, oh, if you see it, it has to be true. Like, that's the only way we know something is true. We can look at evidence and testable predictions to see things. That's how observation works. It's not necessarily you have to see the initial case. You can see the products of those cases to tell if something happened. So I would probably sort of, make the distinction. Well, you believe in God creating everything. When have you seen something being created by God? If you can provide that, then great. But unfortunately, we never see that either, and yet you believe it. I would simply go with the evidence that the geneticists give on the subjects that I've raised as the best evidence that I follow. Whereas I've never seen any God create anything. Maybe they can poof it into existence in front of me and convince me.
Okay, appreciate the response there, Mark. And Kent, we'll hand it over to you if you had a response. Go ahead.
Well, it's a fair question. We don't see any new, I don't think we see any new information added. You can imagine it if you want. That's my point. It's imagination. And what would a folded protein do? Is that going to add something new? Is this an example about that's going to turn an amoeba to a whale over trillions of generations? You can believe that, but that's not science. So I have nothing more to add to that one.
Okay, thank you, Kent. Mark, quick final word. Mark, I'm not sure why it's not letting me unmute you. It keeps saying that you muted yourself. Maybe
definitely. No worries. Thank you anyway. We don't see an amoeba turn to elephant, nor should we expect to. Again, that's just a straw man brought up by Kent to beat away at so he feels good. This isn't what we're saying, which I've said over and over and over. Kent, I don't know whether you're just not listening or you've got your hat on too tight. I don't know what's happening. That is not what we're saying that would happen. Things don't go from modern amoeba to elephant or elephant to monkey, but things were more primitive in the past and they got more complicated.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Patty Smith. So next question comes in. This one's now for you, Kent. So we got a nice healthy mix of questions for Kent and for Mark. So this one comes in from Galaxy OW. Question for Kent. You make a positive claim that there are limits for microevolution. What is the limit between Archaeopteryx and a modern bird/crow? Positive claims require positive evidence. Go ahead, Kent.
Well, I guess if I was demanding that my theory be taught and everybody has to pay for it, there might be, a little meat behind that one, a little teeth behind that one. There, so far, all we've ever seen, I don't know if we've ever seen an Archaeopteryx reproduce. I doubt that. But crows, we see them all the time. Crows always make baby crows. So, do you know an example? Can you give me an example where a crow had made a non-baby crow or where it came from a non-crow? That's all we've ever seen. We got a bunch of birds we raise around here for the Science Center for kids to come take tours. So as far as is an Archaeopteryx and a crow related, you can believe that if you want, but there's no evidence that they're related. You don't see Archaeopteryx reproducing at all. I don't know of any still alive. But so I would have to point out, all we've ever seen is every kind of bird we have, every kind of bird, canaries, buzzards, crows, herons, storks, all of them produce after their kind, which is what the Bible said would happen. So if you wish to believe something other than that, enjoy yourself, but that's not science.
All right. Thank you, Kent, for that response. Mark, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so Archaeopteryx, I read that today's discussion wasn't about the fossil record, so I sort of didn't bring up fossils like Archaeopteryx. It's basically a bird with all the characteristics of bird, but it still has the teeth that you would find in a dinosaur. It was predicted. I believe it was Darwin. I could be wrong on that, but it was somebody that predicted that if evolution is true, then we should see a bird with teeth, that dinosaurs evolved into avian forms. And we did find multiple examples of Archaeopteryx, which is almost perfectly in between a bird and a dinosaur, small dinosaur. So there doesn't seem to be a limit here into, dinosaurs always remain dinosaurs and will not turn into birds, because we've got the procession that leads up to them becoming an avian form. And Kent sort of said, oh, well, they're always ever a X fills a spot. I think his example earlier was apples, and it's like, well, that's a terrible example because you're selecting for apples. You're selecting the appliest apples and then replanting them because that's what the farmers want. It's a terrible example. So, again, Kent's analogies are terrible. Kent cannot answer the mechanism, not just there are limits, but what is the mechanism that stops, say, a dinosaur going to Archaeopteryx, then going to a bird crow? What is the mechanism?
Mark, thank you for your response. And Kent, question was for you. We'll give you the last word.
Well, the mechanism is the genetic limits. You got a gene code. You are not capable of making anything other than a human. I'd bet you $1,000 on that one. No human today is even capable of making anything other than a human. And Archaeopteryx was not capable of making anything other than an Archaeopteryx. And dinosaurs, pick your dinosaur. Apatosaurus was not capable of making anything other than a baby Apatosaurus. But you guys got lines on paper for these charts, and you said something about the amoeba didn't turn to an elephant. I didn't say it turned to an elephant over one generation. You think the amoeba turned to an elephant over billions of generations. The thing that keeps you guys quiet is time. More. And if that doesn't work, try more time. Billions of years. If that doesn't work, try trillions, quadrillions, quintillions, sextillion. That's not going to help. But that, you've mentioned it 20 times so far tonight, I believe, if my count's correct, that over millions of years or over millions of generations, stop. That's not science. You draw these lines on paper and say, look at this, boys and girls. We can connect the shark and the fern and the starfish and an octopus. Came from an amoeba. That's what the kids are being taught, Mark. They look at this propaganda and believe it. All the many forms of life on Earth today descended from a common ancestor, a primitive unicellular organism. This is propaganda. This is not science. I disagree. There are limits to the bird, to the crow. The crows will always produce baby crows. Always. And they always came from baby crows. From mama crow. Going back in time, it was always a crow. No exceptions. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Next one comes in from Vans 182 Workshop. Another super chat. This one is now for you, Mark. So he asks, Stand for Truth for Mark, please explain how petrified trees are sometimes found going through the layers upside down if the layers of the geologic column are millions of years apart in age.
Yeah, so there's as far as I know, and I'm not a geologist, and this is sort of off topic, but it's fine. And I'm not a geologist. As far as I understand, this happens on several different locations where there can be a buildup of water sometimes that then the trees get pushed by certain flood mechanisms that basically first they float on the water, and the water makes it more permeable, and then they're sort of flipped. It can also happen with some geological movements where the sort of a mountainside or a volcanic area is sort of flipped over, sort of a folding process. That is very, very rare as I understand it, I think. But there are a number of mechanisms that geologists can point towards the geological column being inverted. And I definitely know that due to plate subduction, I believe it is, where one plate pushes down on the other, it can fold and be upside down. So what you'll have is the geological column going up, and then down as it's been flipped over to the other side. So there can be multiple processes for this, but as far as I understand, that can be the reason for it.
Okay, thank you, Mark, for that response. And Kent, over to you. The floor is yours.
Well, first place, there is no such thing as a geologic column. If the top layer is younger, where is it coming from? Outer space? All the layers of the Earth are the same age. They all formed in one big flood. If I shake up a jar, which I do every time I take a tour here, I get a sample right out of the ground, put it in a jar with water and shake it up. It automatically separates gravel, sand, clay. Well, yeah, I agree there are layers to the Earth, and I agree there are petrified trees standing up. Here's me by one in Yellowstone. Central Alabama has dozens of them running from one seam of coal through the next seam of coal. You got the Blue Creek and the Mary Lee Formation of coal. The guy that was here today took the tour with me, his whole family. He's been in the coal mining business for generations up there in central Alabama. This one goes through a seam of coal at the bottom, then through a bunch of rock, then through another seam of coal. And the idea that the tree could be petrified in these layers, and then the layers flip over without damaging the tree, is insane. We see petrified trees standing up, running through many layers. That's a pretty common fossil. And sometimes they're upside down. Well, we see Mount St. Helens, when it blew all the trees down in the mud there, it made many layers in minutes. The layers formed quickly. This is not millions of years. There's no such thing as a geologic column. And in the Spirit Lake, thousands of logs were floating. Many began floating upright and then settled to the bottom. Upright floating logs. And the layers formed around them in 20 years. I think Noah's flood made all the layers. Sometimes pet polystratofossils are upside down, running through the layers. I think a Noah's flood is the only logical explanation for the answer to the question there. But the Bible says the scoffers are willingly ignorant of the creation and the flood and the coming judgment of God. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Kent. And Mark, you get the last word. Question was for you. Oh, and just make sure to unmute yourself, Mark.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you. There's no geological explanation for this sudden burial or flood. There's no evidence for the flood. Not worldwide. There may have been a local flood in Mesopotamia. I believe that Professor Finkel recently found a tablet that showed that the flood myth has been a myth that's been carried over from earlier Mesopotamian tribes. That's come out recently. There's no evidence for a worldwide flood, and there's certainly better geological theories of how certain things got in certain places. I think there's the Black River Delta, where if the flood happened and it would have to put down sediment, thousands of times a day instead of twice a day for the tides. There's a lot of evidence to show that the flood is complete hokum. Nobody reputable in geology believes that. It's just certainly people rely on their faith to say that it's true, which again isn't science. And if you want to believe a flood, that's fine. It's not going to be taught in schools because that's your religious belief, while things like geology and evolution are not religious beliefs. They are proper demonstrable science.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to a couple super chats here. James W. This one, he's just mentioning the after show over on his and Amy Newman's channel. So right there, open mic, all are welcome. And then also logical, plausible, probable, same thing. He says after show as well over on his channel. So it looks like there's two after shows, but James also had kind of a comment and question attached to his as well. James will be here next week for the next debate with Kent. So James is asking you, Kent, he's pointing out still no mechanism to impose your limits on mutation. So I guess this goes back to that part of the discussion. Anything you'd like to add to that, Kent?
Well, what do we observe? We observe all the mutations that have been observed are harmful, fatal, or neutral. They do nothing. When I take my tour here, we got some ducks in our lake that have a fuzz growing out of their head, feathers growing out of their head. It was a mutation. The skull bones didn't grow together right. So the mutation causes the feathers to grow on their head funny. Okay, it's not helpful. Nobody's observed a beneficial mutation that is capable of taking over a population or adding something new. If you do get a beneficial mutation, don't you have to have two of the opposite sex in the same place at the same time, and they got to find each other and be interested? It just isn't science. It's a religious belief. James, if you believe, I think the mutations are limited by what we can observe. All we see are bad ones, or duplicating information that's already there, like the five-legged bull. They didn't add any new information, or the two-headed turtle, or the four-winged fly. They already had wings. They already had wings. It didn't change anything. It duplicated information and made it where it can't fly. So it's now a crawl. So I would say a scientific observation tells us we don't see it happen. Is it genetic limits? Sure. There's no gene code in the bull to make it grow wings. It doesn't have the code for that. And it wouldn't get it over millions of generations. You can believe that, but it's not science. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Kent. James, thanks for the super chat. And Mark, over to you if there's anything you'd like to add.
Yeah, so this is a fundamental misunderstanding of what Kent's saying. Would you need two things in the same mutation at the same time? No, you wouldn't. And that's where Kent's completely and utterly wrong. He says there's no beneficial mutation. So I'll just explain that for a second, that all you need is one, and they will have children, a mixer with, just say they have 8 children and 4 have the mutation and 4 don't. What will happen is that over time, that mutation will be selected for, so the ones without the mutation will not do as well as the ones with the mutation. Then you'll have more, then it'll be out of 8 children each, you will have more and more and more having the mutation rather than not. So no, you don't need 2 at the same time. And it's hilarious, the misunderstanding of how evolution works that Kent has, that he thinks that you need 2 things with the same mutation in order for natural selection to work. You don't. You just need 1. And then some children will have it, some children won't. The ones that have it will be selected. Now, beneficial mutations. I mentioned tetrachromia earlier in women that gives them extra eye receptors. That is a beneficial mutation. In fact, after there was a car crash in America, they tested these people and found that they had a gene for higher bone density. Their bones are stronger, and they do not, all of them came through a horrific crash with no broken bones. And people said, well, how did that happen? They have a gene for higher bone density. And so they are way more resistant to their bones breaking than other humans. Now, this is an example of a beneficial mutation. There is a consequence, as all mutations do have consequence, and is why you won't get a bull with wings. It's because the consequence is that you can't sustain your body weight with those wings. You can't sustain it in the air. That's a consequence. These people with heavy bones, the consequence that they found it more difficult to float. But if there was a situation where they weren't near the water and all they had to do is survive, and it was beneficial to have more dense bones, then that would be selected for. And it is a beneficial mutation because those people went through a car crash and did not have a broken bone between the entire family where others would have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And question was for you, Kent, if you wanted to have a final word there.
No, I have nothing to add to that one. Go ahead.
Okay, so we got 2 more super chats, and then we're going to call it. But the super chats, I'm looking at them, are kind of off topic. So let me put them on screen. And, gentlemen, if you do want to answer it, it's up to you. If not, that's completely fine because it is kind of off topic. So Boomer21 asks, for Mark, the amount of C14 in the atmosphere, I'm guessing, is about 0.00. You can see the number there. If the Earth would be over 4 billion years, we should have reached equilibrium. Please explain. That's obviously an age of the Earth related question. So
yeah.
It's up to you, Mark.
Yeah, I'm also not a climatologist or something like that. So, but this sounds like a usual creationist talking point where something that's carbon-14, basically one of the radiometric isotopes. I'm not sure what he's getting at. We should have reached an equilibrium of carbon-14. As far as I understand, a carbon cycle is very complex. And is he talking about decay? Is that what he's talking about?
The atmosphere and the C14. I'm not sure. Is there anything you
What I'll say then is, if you disagree with current science, Boomer, go and produce a paper yourself and challenge. Everything in science is up for challenge. Everything. And the person that overturns like evolution, if Kent wants to challenge evolution, bring out a paper on it, submit it and overturn it. You will be famous. And any scientist that can overturn any of these theories or these commonly known scientific principles will be famous, and they will have tons of grant money come in. Go for it. Have at it. Go for it.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And Kent, is there anything you want to add to that before we get to the last final question?
Well, not much. There are lots of scientific limits on the age of the Earth. The Earth is spinning, but it's slowing down. Well, that puts a limit. The moon is going around the Earth, but the moon's leaving us. It's getting further away. Well, how long can that go on? If you reverse that, how close could the moon get before the tides would destroy everything, or before they would collapse? 1.4 billion years, the orbit collapses. So I cover on my video number 1 of my series about 30 or 40 different scientific limits that say, look, the Earth can't be billions of years old. I'm sorry. Called the age of the Earth. Called 8x5 Big Dino, extension 1, or go to drdino.com. There are all kinds of limits on how big animals can get. There are limits. The Earth can't be billions of years old. The C-14 is just one of many that says, look, it's not billions. I know Mark relies on time. I'll get the pacifier out. This is his thing that keeps him happy. Time, mentioned it 20 times tonight. Well, give it enough time, it'll happen. You can't have the time. I think Mark would agree. If you could if I could prove the Earth was not billions of years old, your whole theory collapses on that one point right there.
All right. Appreciate that, Kent. Mark, you can have a quick final word. Then we have one final question, and then we are going to call it, gentlemen, because we are already over time as usual with these debates. So, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, the moon getting further away, Kent's assuming that the moon's been moving at the same rate away from the Earth at all times in history, which is not what the science says. Don't forget, as you get closer, two objects of mass get closer, the gravitational attraction is actually greater. So what we should see over time is the more that it goes on, the faster the moon will move away from us, because the further it is away, the less attraction there is. And that's just simple gravity. It's a very, very simple thing. Kent wants to ignore this and say, hey, it can't be that old. He assumes that the moon's been moving at the same rate at all times, which is not what people say. So again, bust out the straw man, put it full of straw, beat away at it, feel good about yourself. It's just a misunderstanding of the actual science. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I'm not really sure what Boomer's getting at with the C-14 and what he means by reaching equilibrium. I'm not even sure what he's talking about.
All right, Mark, thank you so much. Since I only have one question that I can get to, and then we got to wind it down. I do see a couple super chats. I do apologize. They are off topic, and I do want to get an on topic question in here. So apologies ahead of time, guys, but I do appreciate the support and donations. I do want to keep it on topic as much as possible. And we did get a couple off topic questions in there. So that'll do for that. Okay. So final question. And then we're going to wrap up this epic debate. So this one comes in from Wade Robbins. This one is now for you, Kent. And I think we've had a pretty good mixture of questions for the both of you. So he asks, this is Wade the Wizard. So you and Kent and Wade just finished a debate trilogy. So he asks, why do all vertebrates, including fish, whales, dolphins, have eyes with inverted optic nerves, while all cephalopods have a direct optic nerve?
Very interesting question. Never seen that one or thought about that one. First of all, I don't know that it's true, but if it is true, I think it still would indicate design. Why do the British drive on the wrong side of the road? I don't know. That's what they chose. That's why they lost the war. So I think good. That'd be a good field of research. It wouldn't prove nobody designed the optic nerve or the eye or the brain to interpret the signal. But I don't have an answer to that one. I'll see what I can find on that one. Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right. Appreciate your response, Kent. Mark, we'll give you a quick response if you'd like to, and then go from there. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah. So cephalopods, octopus and, squids and stuff, they have excellent eyesight underwater, way better than humans, way better than humans. So evolution basically says that there was a development that gave them this eyesight. That is incredibly good because they need it for they're suited to their environment and what they're trying to do. But yeah, a big shout out to Wade. He's really good. I do enjoy watching him on Standing for Truth. Yeah, big shout out to Wade. But we are under evolution. That's perfectly explained. Under Kent's thing, I'm not sure how he even explains that, if at all. Love for him to get an answer. I'm not sure what he's talking about, which war that the British lost. Not sure about that one. maybe that was in your lifetime and not mine, Kent. I don't know what you're referring to. I mean, World War II, they kind of won, or the Allies won. Not sure about that one.
All right,
Well,
Ken.
go back a little further in history, you know, when we rebelled against the British and we got our freedom over here.
War of
We won
Independence.
that one. And you guys had to have our help to win, you know, the Second World War, but that's okay. Anyway, you drive on the wrong side of the road, that's why. So
Yeah, but that was decided by somebody. I mean, it wasn't like.
and your police, I don't think they're even armed. They just have a club. That's another story. Okay. You said,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
well, the question was about. Put the question back up, can you, Donnie? About
yeah, let's
you
see
lost
if I
it.
can find it. We got
the
about
optic
800
nerve and all that stuff.
questions
Was that it? Okay.
here.
Well,
Yeah.
he said they evolved it because they needed it. I need an extra arm once in a while to open the door while I hold the groceries. It'd be nice to have a tail. Well, you could drive the car, tune the radio, and hold the can of Coke all the same time. Lost it because we didn't need it. And the octopus evolved better eyes because it needed it. Wow. Okay. That's great faith. You and SpongeBob. You ought to make video games together. Just imagine you can go around shoot, you know, spaceships down. You can imagine all you want. Okay, that's it.
That's it. That's it.
Yep. I'll do some research on that optic nerve thing. That's interesting. I think it was designed.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's a really good evolutionary trait. It's fascinating.
Oh, okay.
All right, gentlemen, Kent, Mark, we made it. We've endured to the end of this debate. I do appreciate you guys giving us 2 hours of your time. And yeah, that's pretty much, unless you gentlemen have some really quick final words, I think we're just going to close it down.
I just want to thank you and Kent for being here. And yeah, I had a blast. So yeah, really good times. And do like and subscribe, Standing for Truth, if you do like these debates. A whole bunch of them. And good luck to James on his debate. Wade, if he comes back, good luck to him as well. They are great guys and present really good arguments. Oh, you spelt my name wrong, Kent. That's terrible.
I want to thank you for Mark for doing this. If you ever get over to America, come visit our Dinosaur Adventureland. We'll give you the tour of the place, show you our science center. This is way more than just an academic debate, though. Give you Pascal's wager. Mark, if you're right, I haven't lost a thing. I've had a wonderful life. If I'm right, God created the world, and you haven't accepted as a savior, you've lost it all. I win either way. I think I'm on the right side of science. But you're really taking a chance there, I believe. You can go to our drdino.com website, DRDINO. We have all kinds of stuff going on our schedule around here. So come visit Dinosaur Adventureland. That's it. I'm done.
All right, thank you. You get some sleep, both of you. Well, I guess, Mark, your day's just starting. Ken's day's just ending. So, gentlemen, thanks for the awesome debate. To the audience, thank you for so many questions, and thank you for being so engaged and involved in this important topic. I'm going to let the debaters out while I stick around, of course, for a couple minutes to go over reminders and announcements. God bless all. All right, there we go. I mean, I feel like the debate just started. 2 hours just like that. I'm telling you, these debates fly by. And a few of the debates that we've done recently have been over 3 hours. And even the, the 3 hour debates, which is as long as like a Lord of the Rings movie, which I'm sure many of you are fans of. And they fly by. These are important topics. And, I love our audience. I appreciate the debaters being so willing to engage in these topics, because, if we didn't have debaters who were brave enough and willing enough to step into the octagon, because, debating is not the easiest thing in the world. And it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of prep. I appreciate their time. So, I do want to thank all the debaters, whether it's a debater that, me as a host would agree with on certain topics or disagree with. I always do want to, express my appreciation for the willingness to engage in these topics, because, or else we wouldn't have debates if people weren't willing to, step into the ring. So this was an epic debate. Mark Reed, fantastic debater. Kent Hovind, fantastic debater. So, this is essentially the result of what happens when you get two really good debaters, very confident debaters into the debate octagon together. they make for a debate to remember. So I do want to thank everybody for being here. There's Mark Reed. From being in the show to being in the chat. Very smooth transition there, Mark. So thank you. Thank you guys. Just because, there are people who follow this channel and debate on this platform, and there's differences in views, but I always just appreciate the willingness to discuss these issues, because nobody likes an echo chamber. We want to get in here and talk about our differences, and that's also why we've been hosting this soteriology panel debate every single week. And so I think we've done 5 or 6 of them already, and it's been a ton of fun. As a matter of fact, tonight we're 95% certain. We'll see if we can get our presentations done in time. Me, Charles, and Justin should be doing a show probably. Well, we've got 2 after shows, John and James. So, we'll let those after shows go for 3 or 4 hours, and then we might go live here for just a show on soteriology. We want to respond to a video. But anyways, moving on to the topic at hand, we've got the next big debate in the Evolution Debate Challenge series. We're now over 30 of these. So, when we put out the challenge to the community at the end of 2021, we knew we'd get a few debates, but I didn't know we would get a few a week. So this has been huge. It's been prolific. Anybody not yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. We just hit 10,000 subscribers, and we're moving along smoothly and consistently. So, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, because we do have a ton more debates coming up. Altogether now, we've hosted and moderated over 200 debates on all sorts of topics: theology, soteriology, creation, evolution, ancestry, philosophy, nature of God, you name it. We've done it. End times theology. So this one's coming up next week. I believe we are rescheduling for the 19th, which is a Tuesday. So James W. and Kent will complete their trilogy. They will have their Endgame debate, chapter 3, Tuesday the 19th, I believe it is. So tonight we had Mark Reed and Kent. This really was an epic showdown. I predicted it, and prediction confirmed. Then we've also got another epic one coming up, T-Jump. This will be the epic rematch. And Dr. Dino, this one specifically is going to focus on testable predictions. So this is kind of fun. Testable predictions for this debate, hominid fossil record for this debate. And then we've also got Luca Medugno, first week of August. Him and Kent will be debating beneficial mutations. We've also got a couple debates coming up on other topics other than evolution. Charles Jennings, David Preston. Charles will be the one hopefully joining me tonight if we do get to our soteriology show. But again, that'll be in 3 or 4 hours. So until then, I want everybody to enjoy the after show parties. Salvation in the Old Testament, faith alone or faith plus works. I am extremely pumped for this. Probably one of the a debate that I'm just really looking forward to. And David's a fantastic debater, very knowledgeable, very confident. Charles also very confident, very knowledgeable, and scholarly. This is going to be a very sophisticated debate, guys. You do not want to miss this one. This one's at the end of the month, I believe July 30th. So that one is going to be that one's going to be a lot of fun. David Preston, again, is going to be debating CJ Cox. CJ Cox is going to be here for several more debates coming up. One here on English translations, textual criticism, KJV only. Another one coming up on open theism with Will Duffy. That one's scheduled. And then we're in final details in terms of negotiating a debate between CJ Cox and Francis Turretin on annihilation, conditional immortality versus eternal conscious torment. That one's going to be cool. Eddie Brute Facts and Nick Sayers. This one's coming up in a couple weeks as well. Is the KJV the only accurate English translation? And also, I've been doing a series on end times theology. I'm on episode 3. I spent all night last night studying and putting together a presentation on preterism. Okay, so that's going to be episode 4 or 5. We'll see. I'm juggling a lot of information, and I'm not sure which one I want to present first. So it's probably going to be preterism. That'll be in the next few days. This one's taking a little bit more work to put together the episode. So within the next few days, that should be available. And then at the end of the month, I did set this. Can't remember the exact same day. Okay, I'm looking in the chat. There's Cinecon. Yes. So I appreciate that, brother. I appreciate all the time you've given me, for some awesome debates. If you're not yet, if you're new to this channel, click the debates hosted by Stand for Truth playlist section, and check out all the epic debates that we've had. Yeah, so this one's going to be awesome. Okay, this one's going to be an open mic. So we're going to have Kent Hovind on, and he's going to present his view of the rapture and end times theology. But I'm going to open up the mic if anybody else wants to join, in order to ask questions, provide their input. This one's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to this one. So it'll probably be about an hour and a half to 2 hours of just discussing all things end times theology. So that's coming up, and that's coming up quickly. What else do I have here? This is just a snapshot of the overall material that we do have on the channel. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it that comes to mind. So check the event schedule if you want to see everything else that is set on the channel. Again, this is just a snapshot of the overall material. Tonight, I want to thank the debaters. King's Table, yeah, you're always welcome to join. So we do these panel discussions. We've been doing them once a week, but there is a lot on the plate. I've got a couple debates that I'm prepping for in the future. Actually, 3 that I can think of, a couple for August. I am going to be debating on, I think it's going to be me and Heffy KC, who he goes by Heffy KC on YouTube. We'll be debating probably soteriology in the next couple of weeks. So I got my own debates that I'm going to be working on too. So we're doing our best to fit everything in. We've pretty much been doing a show every single night. And so if you do, appreciate and enjoy the full-time content coming out of Standing for Truth Ministries, the summer of all debates, guys, summer of all debates, you can support us through Patreon. You can support us over our official website, standfortruthministries.com, which reminds me, the website designer and myself, we need to do some updating, some serious updating on the website, because we've had so much content over the last couple months that I need to get it all up on the website. So there's just, if only we can add an extra 6 to 7 hours, in the day, but then we'd still probably be complaining. So there he is, Heffy KC. Yeah, he'll be the one I'm debating. And then I've also got an endogenous retrovirus debate coming up with Luca, and a couple other debates. So tons of topics for me to focus on throughout the day. Doki Doki Bible Club, thank you so much there, brother. Doki Doki, there we go. Support the SFT Ministries. And since it was mentioned a couple times throughout the debate, there's the endogenous retrovirus handbook. You can find it on our website, and it'll take you right to the Amazon webpage where you can pick it up. There's Luca in the chat. Luca Medugno always provides a cordial, sophisticated debate. He's been here many times. He's going to be here many more times in the future. We're going to be getting him around too with David McQueen for their continued technical discussion on the heat problem. So Luca is going to be here next month. For Kent, he's debating me coming up on ERVs. Luca he's a chemistry teacher. He knows his stuff. He's reviewed my book, and we are going to discuss it. We're going to debate it. So that's coming up in the next few weeks as well. Okay, check in the chat, guys. Thank you so much. 2 after shows. Amy Newman, Logical, Plausible, Probable. Enjoy the party. Doki Doki Bible Club. Much appreciated. Hey, maybe me and Mark Reed will have a discussion on this one of these days too. He's always cordial and sophisticated as well. So, and there's CJ. Him and I just finished a series here on Inspiring Philosophy, a critique of Inspiring Philosophy. So check that out too, guys. Again, thank you so much for helping us hit 10,000 subscribers, helping us reach 200 plus debates. And last thing I'll mention, Doki Doki Bible Club points out the fun continues. And there he is, the LPP himself, Logical, Plausible, Probable. Come join the after show. And Amy Newman's also got an after show as well. So check that out. And there we go, Cheryl. So appreciate all the mods. Appreciate the very lively live chat tonight. Always a ton of fun. And again, I apologize for not being able to get to all the questions. You know, we do have time limits on these debates. The evolution debate challenge series, we try to do 90 minutes and we always go about 2 hours. But you know what? Time flies by. The conversation is always so much fun and engaging. So it is difficult to wrap it up at the 90-minute mark. So, okay. With that being said, I think that's pretty much it, guys. We will talk to you soon. We'll probably see you tonight sometime in the next 3 or 4 hours after the after shows. And yeah, God bless. Stand for Truth is